चलिए सीधे रुक करेंगे मुंबई का, जहां वर्ल्ड ट्रेड सेंटर की जनरल असेंबली है, 44वीं जनरल असेंबली है और ये शुरू हो चुकी है.
For industry to have matured sufficiently to look at it as a partnership with government and not to seek willy-nilly such relaxation. Why do I say this? Because today, as you know, we are really having to take very stringent measures to get our tax revenue to GDP ratios up, to get our fiscal deficits down, to get our international ratings back on track, so that the impact on our sort of feasibility for capital inflows and while keeping the cost of such inflows down also is contained. So this is a kind of a ratchet effect. We come down steeply in terms of our tax experience, but we come up at a different gradient because much more extraordinary effort has to be made. With that light, at the same time, given our current experience of relatively contained economic growth, what we did in the budget, as you all have seen, is we were forced, in a way obliged, to get some revenue from the corporate sector by putting in a temporary surcharge, but at the same time, we gave certain benefits and incentives to the two subsectors of the corporate sector in manufacturing and construction, where we felt that the multiplier effect would be very high. In the case of construction, we gave special deductions from the income tax base for interest paid on construction loans, and at the same time, this would impulse middle-income housing. And in the manufacturing side, for large manufacturing investment in the Indian context, we gave immediate write-off so that the total write-off in the first period, in the first year, would be almost as high as 50% over 2 years. So huge incentives were given to the corporate sector in this budget. And despite the 1% overall corporate surcharge addition over a certain amount, which was supposed to be only a temporary matter. Similarly, we realized that in the personal income tax side, because of high inflation, there was going to be some fiscal drag. Because we assumed a 10% inflation had affected the first group of taxpayers at rupees 2 lakhs, which is 20 million rupees. And then at that point, we said that we will give it back, that money back to those who are affected at that particular point. So we gave back 2,000 rupees each, because they would all be paying 2,000 rupees extra in taxation just because of inflation. And in order to cover that, we also added a small surcharge on those above, on the very high income groups. By the way, here I do want to point out that in India, our highest tax rate, marginal rate of the personal income tax, is at 30%, and at the level of 5 crore, for example, if you translate that into any foreign currency other than Singapore, our marginal rate is much lower than any country that you take, whether it's the US, UK, Germany, Brazil, South Africa, and so on, which means that at purchasing power parity, our higher marginal income tax rates are among the lowest in the world today. So there is a huge incentive for entrepreneurship in India. Looking at that, I think that what we need today in the overall fiscal sector, apart from expenditure control and subsidies, the government, as you see, is very much trying to control subsidies by bringing in petroleum and diesel pricing as close to the global markets as feasible. That is a major change. And if you look over the last 3 years or so, the subsidy content in terms of GDP, whether it is food, fertilizer, and so on, are being brought down, and they are being attempted to be better targeted than before. To what extent we will be successful with these policies will be seen, of course, as the outcomes become more obvious. On the expenditure side, you will see that much of the expenditure targets and objectives during the year have been met, and the excessive expenditure on the plan side have been contained. So the fiscal
तो पार्थ सारथी शो में इस वक्त संबोधित करते हैं और इसी के साथ सचिन अपना